So in this video we'll be looking at why putting a maple in a pot is completely different to put it in the ground, and why using a very large pot is not the same as the ground. It really is fundamentally different. Hi there maple fans, and in this series of videos I'll be sharing what I do throughout an entire year on a monthly basis. Please note that these months are based on UK timings, but of course can easily be adapted to anywhere else in the world. So here we have my copy of a Sakazuki, brilliant tree, absolutely wonderful fall or autumn colours. This looks perhaps to the eye that, the pot's too small and there's an issue here. Maybe that should have gone in the ground, maybe it should be into a bigger pot. But with the winter approaching here in the UK, well, it's still the end of summer, but it won't be long till September, October, November. This is absolutely fine. And I just want to dispel a myth today that actually putting your maple into the ground is the same as a big pot, because it fundamentally isn't, and explain why that can cause so many problems. So just moving on to a couple of Dragon Master Japanese maples, which clearly highlight one of the big differences, that the root system of this particular tree, which has been low grafted for me, which is very, very kind of someone to do that, is out of the ground. I mean, it's several feet out of the ground, to be honest. So the cold, the elements are far more likely to affect the root system than it would be if it was buried in the ground, where really in this country, in the UK, when it rarely gets down to below -3 or 4, apart from the very top, is really, really well insulated. So you don't get sort of major frost issues. But as you can see, that's a ceramic pot, it's up on a wall. That's going to freeze in the winter, absolutely. So the root system being up in the air is different fundamentally. So that's why we need to treat maples that are in pots in a fundamentally different way. So it sounds kind of a basic question, but what is this pot about really, of whatever size? It's porous in this case, so it is going to let go of moisture better than a glazed one, but if it's your choice to have glazed, that's fine. But it's only got for drainage a small hole at the bottom. So a pot is a massive compromise, to be honest, where if it had no base to it whatsoever, well, all the compost would fall out, but they could make a mesh or something across the entire base. But then the water retention would be terrible and the sort of water leak away very, very quickly. And obviously the roots could get into the soil and they'd find their way down and then into the whatever, potentially, or if you put it on the ground, that you'd land up with roots in the ground. So that's what pots are, and that's what pots fundamentally do. Here you've got some of my little trees, and as you can see, they're just in plastic containers, but in principle they're exactly the same. They're not going to allow the tree to spread out too far up, down, left or right, and retain the root system in a sort of semi-moist kind of situation to retain some water, but it's absolutely critical they don't retain too much. So putting these trees into a great big pot full of compost is just going to keep them really, really soggy, and the root system's going to rot, which is a major issue. So what I've got coming at the end of this video is a way of cheating this system somewhat, which I'll show you. But another example of this lovely little tree here. And just a heads up with labelling, these handwritten labels tend to wear off, so something more substantial can be really useful, or just refresh them with a new permanent marker pen maybe. But there we have a tree in its technical pot. It's been there for an entire year, surrounded by a few pebbles, and that works absolutely fine. But why do this? Why keep it in a pot? So what we'll see in a second is I will remove this tree from the pot, and I think then we'll understand what the concept is. So as you can see there, some people might say that's an issue. That's wonderful, because as those roots grow round the side of the pot, they're going to offer really, really good protection. It's like a blanket wrapped around the root system, really. And you can imagine that if that's the outside of the root system, the inner part of the root system is absolutely packed, and that outside is really going to protect it from any frost and heat. And just to say, if you'd like to come with me on my Acer journey, please do like and subscribe to my little channel. It really, really helps. I've also recently set up a Patreon site, so that's a great way of supporting me too, and help out with some of the costs of my excursions, really. There's also the offer of some personal help, if you'd like it, either in a group format or on a one-to-one basis. So it's often the case on forums that people say, you know, do this, do that, put a tree in the ground, all the rest of it. Just to think about growth rate for a bit though, this Cotonuito I've had for about 4 years, and this is the size of it in that pot. It's very manageable. It's probably 3.5 feet tall, something like that. It's not got a massive spread on it. Actually, that could have probably been in a smaller pot, but I've got away with it, sort of thing. But it's a nice sized tree, and it's only that size. So moving on to Bloodgood, which is a similar age. I think I've had that one for about 4 years too. And, you know, it's a completely different kettle of fish. So put that into a larger container, put that into a bigger pot, and you might get away with it because the tree's going to outgrow the problem and fill the pot faster. Whereas a slow-growing dwarf cultivar or something like that is going to take several seasons to fill the pot that it's in and actually do really badly. Its growth rate's going to be adversely affected by soggy roots, too much compost, and that's really going to affect it. So growth rate is a major consideration, to be honest with you. The best thing to do is just to use the correct size pots, pot on in small increments, because one sort of size increase in a pot is probably double the amount of compost. So it doesn't seem that there's that much difference, and maybe we've got a larger pot lying around we just think we need to use. But actually spending a couple of pounds or dollars on the correct size pot can be really beneficial. So another example of why a pot is not the ground and why it's so different is, again, just talking about growth rate, but I've got a comparison for you. So this is an Orange Dream that, yeah, I think again is about 4 years old. There's a little bit of leaf scorch there because that's what happens to Orange Dream. It really does. It really hates direct sunlight, but in plenty of shade, it still looks lovely and has done very well. And it's got a sort of spreading slightly but fairly sparse growth habit. But comparing that to the Orange Dream outside in the ground, it's absolutely chalk and cheese. The ground has unlimited drainage. It has a limited resource in terms of nutrients, because mine's quite a clay soil actually, and that promotes it. And it's an order of magnitude bigger. Just to note that Japanese maple roots are not invasive, so it's not going to damage my foundations of my house or cause any problems. Yes, because it's got big and it's now out of the shade more, we've got some leaf scorch on there on the sort of tips. But overall, doing very well, but absolutely different to a pot. So how can we perhaps slightly cheat the system? I'm not advocating doing this, but it's worked for me. So this garnet is also 4 years old. It's one of the original ones I bought like the others. But that's been in that container for its entire 4 years and has done perfectly well, to be honest. But this is not a pot. So I can't lift it up because it's far too heavy. But at the bottom of that container, there is a few slats of wood upon which I put landscape fabric. So really, pretty much the entire bottom of that container is like the ground, and water can soak away. So I've tried filling this to the brim, the water just soaks away in no time. So that is much more analogous to the ground. I've got away with it. It looks absolutely fine, and has thrived every year in every stage of its development, really. So maybe an exception to the rule, but if you really must put a maple into a very large pot, it might be worth considering, constructing something like that, and perhaps you'd have more chance to get away with it. I wouldn't do it. I'd pot on slowly, as I always recommend, but there's an option for you to try if you so wished.